And Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that I be recognized for such time as I shall consume.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. As a reflect of my 28 years serving in the United States Senate, I'm reminded of the lessons I've learned from my former colleagues and friends who have served beside me in the Senate. I had the privilege of serving with many great titans for a fairly long period of time. Some people thought maybe too long. And I had the privilege of serving with the people that I've known very well, people like Orrin Hatch, Mike Enzi, friends I miss dearly. And I single them out because they're no longer with us. Senator Hatch's farewell speech in 2018, he reflected on the striking shift in polarization and partisanship of the Senate. And he yearned for the days members finding common ground and breaking bread together. Orrin reflected in his farewell speech. He said, could two people with popular opposite beliefs and from vastly different walks of life come together as often as Teddy and I did? And the answer is yes. Conservative Republicans and liberal Democrats come together today all the time and will of the future, but you may not hear about it because it's not newsy. The media doesn't really care if everybody loves everybody. Then there's Barbara Boxer, and not too many people who are making their last talk about members of the other party, but I would do this. I've shared this story many times with you all about how former Senator Barbara Boxer of California and I worked together for many years as chair and ranking members of the EPW committee to get things done. Now, you can't get two more ideologically different senators than Barbara and me. Barbara, a proud Democrat of the most far left state in the nation, and me, a proud Republican from the most conservative state in the nation. But we were able to see past our ideologically differences to work together, and we did. We got stuff done. We passed landmark legislation from highway bills like the FAST Act, the Frank Lautenberg chemical safety bill. You remember that. Most of the people are still remembering that. We did it, and we did it time and time again. Every Wednesday, the Republicans in this meeting in the Senate is where the chairman will go. I shouldn't probably be telling all you guys what Republicans do, but they go around the room and give an update on what their committee is working on. And I would always say at that time, quote, now is the time to hear from the committee that gets things done. And I could say that was Barbara Boxer and I got things done. And you know what? We actually enjoyed it. Nobody believes that we would enjoy it so much and actually get things done. Then there is Jack Reed. Today I have a similar relationship with the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. I'm a Republican, he's a Democrat. Jack is from Rhode Island, a very blue state, but we have worked together for years to pass annual defense authorization bills, which is the most important bill we pass every year. I believe the secret to getting this bill done, and any bipartisan bill for that matter, is determination, but also trust and respect in the member that you're sitting across the table from, a lesson that Senator Hatch set very well. In working with Senator Reed over the years, he has my trust, I have his respect, and it's why we have been successful in what I consider to be the most significant thing that we do every year. Now for me, I was a builder and developer prior to running for public office. I never contemplated getting involved in politics until one day on the job in South Texas, I was told that I needed more than a dozen permits to build a single dock. Now, that didn't make much sense to me, and so I decided at that time to run for office and try to get things done where people are in this body are actually responding favorably. Now, I remember when I first came to the Senate from the House, after I gave a very spirited speech on the Senate floor, Senator Byrd came up to me and he said, young man, The Senate doesn't work like the House. Let me tell you about the Senate. Now, that date happened to be November the 17th, 1994, which was my 60th birthday. And until the day he died, I was still the young man. And Senator Byrd explained to me that, and this is something that a lot of the new members who are just being sworn in as we speak, here for the first time, realize that this is one of the major differences. You know, if you make enemies in the Senate, you're wiped out. And that's not true in the House. And I spent a lot of years in the House before. I also remember friends across the aisle like former Hawaii Senator Danny Akaka, who led singing at our prayer breakfast each week. Ted Kennedy, who I helped out of the Capitol during one of the September attacks that was taking place. And former Majority Leader Harry Reid, who would sometimes move our voting schedule around so that I could get home and watch my grandkids' football games. And then there's the one that we all love, Susan Collins, who is well respected because she makes this institution a better place, and not just because Maine lobster rolls are her signature fare for the eating griefs. Real friendship does exist in the United States Senate, but nobody knows it. It's the big secret around here. Then there's a bipartisan Bible study that we have. Some of you are about the Senate Bible study that meets every Thursday in my hideaway in the Capitol. I've made a point not to miss a Thursday Bible study in 28 years. So I got a record going there. No one's going to beat it. It's well, they could do it, I suppose. After I was first elected to the House in 1986, I attended a Bible study led by a guy named Tom Barrett. I'm going to tell you a story that most people don't want to hear. But one day, Tom Barrett, and a member of Congress from Kansas, invited me to the members' dining room after the Bible study. Keep in mind, this was 1986. They said to me, Inhofe, we think that we've been with you now for over a year since you got in and we think you never really accepted Jesus. Well, I got mad. He said, who's this young guy? They're telling me about Jesus. And they said, all right, when did you ask him? And I said, well, every day. They asked, how long have you and Kay been married? Well, at that time, we were newlyweds. We were probably, I think, celebrating our 29th wedding anniversary. And they said, do you propose to Kay every day? And I said, no. And they replied, why? And I said, because we're already married. Well, bingo, that meant something. And I thought, I said, and I was a little cautious because these guys were younger and I wasn't sure I knew them that well. I said, just in case they were right, in the members' dining room at 2:30 in the afternoon on September 22nd, 1988, I re-accepted Jesus as my personal Lord and Savior. Now, that's life-changing. Okay, now there's Africa. Since joining the Senate, I've made 172 African country visits alongside with good friends from here, like Mike Enzi, John Bozeman, Mike Rounds, Trent Kelly, Tim Wahlberg, and arguably my closest friend, Mark Powers, a real brother. But it all started with Doug Coe. You see, people think of Doug Coe as having been someone who was a great diplomat. He had political influence and all of that. Years back, an article about Doug said this. He said, the extent of Coe's influence in American politics is real. Important figures have acknowledged his role on the national and international stage. For instance, speaking at the 1990 National Prayer Breakfast, President George H.W. Bush praised Coe for his quiet diplomacy. Not many things are quiet around here. Doug spent his years in the countries across the world taking Jesus' name to the kings. I remember him asking me for 8 years. He said, Inhofe, I want you to go to West Africa. and I had no interest in going to West Africa. And he kept saying, and this lasted 8 years. For 8 years, I said no to this guy. But he was very persistent. And I can't tell you why it happened, but then finally I said yes, and I still to this day can't figure out how that happened. But what changed lives, including mine, and all came from Doug Coe. I like to mention some of these people that were really heroes around here that most people don't even know. They don't remember. But they go back and they look them up and they see what great contributions they've made. Not many people are aware of this, but here in the United States Senate, every Wednesday morning, we meet in the Spirit of Jesus. This is something Doug Coe started many years ago during the Eisenhower administration. It's scripturally based, Acts 2:42. We get together, eat together, pray together, and fellowship together, and talk about the precepts of Jesus together. I will always be thankful to Doug for his efforts to quietly speak of Jesus in most every country around the world. Over my 172 African country visits as a senator, sure, I did a military job while I was there, but I developed a deep love and appreciation for the people of Africa that will hold dear with me forever. One thing for my visits remains clear. Building meaningful and lasting relationships with African leaders is vital if the United States is to have a role in the African continent. I was proud to lead the effort to establish AFRICOM. Some of you don't remember this, but we had AFRICOM didn't exist for a long period of time. Every other part of the world did, but not Africa. We had that set that up as a separate combatant command in 2007, and I've seen the benefits across the continent since that time. The presence of U.S. military across Africa means a great deal to our friends and is a worthwhile investment for the United States. A strong and robust relationship with the United States has helped spur economic growth and regional stability across the continent. I think it's important to talk about these things that other people don't talk about. I have faith that my colleagues in the House and Senate will continue the United States-African friendship long after I have retired from the Senate. Western Sahara, there's Western Sahara. Over the years, I've been very outspoken about the situation in Western Sahara. A few years ago, I visited the Sahrawi refugee camps. I visited the children who lived there. They were joyous and happy and ordinary, and children who didn't know yet that they were part of a frozen, forgotten conflict where their hopes and freedoms were dying a cruel death. I urge my colleagues to remember our ideals of democracy and extend that to the Sahrawians. Don't let the world forget them. I urge everyone in this body to stand strong to support Western Sahara's right to self-determination and reject Morocco's reckless attacks on Western Sahara. Ethiopia, then there's Ethiopia, a nation that's close to my heart for many reasons. The human suffering happened there is heartbreaking. Instead of focusing on the importance of creating lasting friendships with the Ethiopian people, some in the United States government looked for ways to punish them. 19 of my African visits have included Ethiopia, where I've watched firsthand the economic transformation that occurred. Their middle class is growing. They have become a regional superpower, and they're a good friend of the United States of America. Their military is professional, capable, and they're punching above their weight in the war against terrorism that continues to plague the continent. They promote regional peace and security by being one of the top troop contributors to the United Nations when they are called upon. Hopefully we can find ways to grow this friendship, Ethiopian friendship. Then there is Zagita Marie. Now, Many of you already know that I have an adopted granddaughter who was born in Ethiopia. Her name is Zagita Marie. We call her the Z Girl, and has a very special story that has grown up to be a very impressive star. Knowing the joys of adoption in my own family, I've worked to ensure all families that choose to adopt can. In 2017, when Ethiopia decided to close inter-country adoptions, I worked directly with my friend and then the Prime Minister, Haile Mariam, on the families that were pending adoptions and were able to complete their adoptions to bring their children home. That was a major thing, a major undertaking. You wouldn't think it would be. That should be natural. The Constitution, you've heard me say this line before, there are two things we should be doing here in Congress, infrastructure and defense. That statement rang true 28 years ago when I got to the Senate, and will ring true in the years to come. Infrastructure, and we've gotten a lot done together on that front over the years. We passed bipartisan landmark infrastructure legislation from Safety Lou to MAP 21 to the FAST Act, all of which rebuilt our nation's crumbling infrastructure so the future generations of Americans still have safe roads and bridges to cross. Before 2005, Oklahoma, my state, was a donor state to the Highway Trust Fund. Now what that means is we were paying more into the Highway Trust Fund than we were receiving out of it. And of course, we were able to change that. Safety Lou created a fair formula for apportionment, so Oklahoma was, I want to say this, I want to make sure that people in Oklahoma, since I'm bagging out of this place, realize some of the things that I've done, and so I know it's controversial in some circles to say this, but I've been one of the staunchest defenders of congressionally directed spending, also known as earmarks. And an earmark must be defined as something that is both authorized and appropriated. It should be the job of Congress to decide how the American people, how their taxes are spent, not unelected bureaucrats in the executive branch. And that's what we're trying to get away from when we're looking at why we should be using earmarks. We have worked across the party lines to ensure the National Defense Authorization Act is signed into law every year. And as I said earlier, the NDAA is the most important bill that we do every year, and for good reason. This year will be the 62nd time that the NDAA has been signed into law, 67 times. And I'm proud to have had a hand in crafting the last 28 years of that bill. The Defense Authorization Bill ensures that our servicemen and women have the training and equipment and other resources they need to defend America here and on the road. It also ensures that the families of the men and women who serve are taken care of. Some elected leaders criticize our military spending, but they need to know that our greatest expense in the military is taking care of our troops, building schools for the young people, and how important that is. And why does it cost more for us to do it than other countries, than the communist countries? It does because we do actually take care of our people. While growing threats from China, Russia, Iran, and others around the world, it is more important now than ever that our troops have what they need to counter this aggression. Ronald Reagan used to say, we maintain the peace through our strength, and that continues to be true today. After all these years serving on the Senate Armed Services Committee, I have come to know with certainty that America cannot lose its focus on fully investing in its defense capabilities. And backgrounds, I've got to say this about Oklahoma. Oklahoma has come out pretty well. You all don't need to feel sorry for Oklahoma. I'll take care of that. And they're very happy right now. Oklahoma has 5 major military installations, from training pilots to building bombs. Each is unique in its mission to support our military. Since 1988, we have gone through 5 BRAC rounds, that's base realignment and closure commissions. In each round, the Department of Defense closed bases and military installations in accordance with their performance. It's something we ought to be doing. And in each round, Oklahoma, the Department of Defense grew its presence in Oklahoma. So Oklahoma has done very well in that period of time. Okay, I'm going to tell a story here that surprised a lot of people, because the star of the story is, none of these kids will remember except for reading about it, is Ronald Reagan. When I was about 6 years old, my dad was a claims adjuster for in a building where Ronald Reagan was an announcer of WHO radio, a sports announcer in Des Moines, Iowa. My dad and Ronald Reagan. I mean, we were close. In fact, I thought he was, I was about 6 years old at that time. I thought that he was related to me. My dad and Ronald Reagan used to play the pinball machine together. He'd come out to the house, and I always thought he was an uncle or some relative. When I was young, my family moved from Des Moines to Tulsa, Oklahoma, but we never missed a Dutch Reagan movie, which is what my dad called him, Dutch Reagan. We would drive, I remember one time we drove all the way down from Tulsa to Durant, Oklahoma, and that was before turnpikes. We drove for hours to watch a Dutch Reagan movie. Never missed one of those. It's not a big deal. It is to me, though, and I'm the guy leaving. Fast forward to when the mayor of Tulsa and Ronald Reagan was president, when President Reagan wanted someone to tout his domestic agenda, he used me. We would appear on all the TV shows, sometimes together, and tell people what they needed to know was happening in the administration. I always remember when, as mayor of Tulsa, I pushed the construction of a low-water dam on the Arkansas River. It ended up being one of the largest public projects in America that was totally privately funded. It had a lot of opposition, but it's pretty amazing. Go back and read about this. You see anything that Ronald Reagan wanted, he got. So then there's Wiley Post, flight around the world. Now, people may not know who Wiley Post is. Everybody knows who Will Rogers is. Well, Wiley Post and Will Rogers are both pilots. The difference is Wiley Post had just one eye, and he was good. In fact, they were together when they died. But back in '91, I was still in the house, and a few friends and I created Wiley Post's 1931 flight around the world in my twin-engine Cessna aircraft. And it's hard to believe that that was 30 years ago when we made that trip that left out of Oklahoma with several stops on the East Coast, then in Europe, and then the Soviet Union. Wiley Post had my plane beat on the travel time. He did his in 8 days. It took me 16 days. But looking back, I'm not sure how Tom Quinn and I survived these stops in the Soviet Union. I can remember praying, Lord, if you got more for me to do, get me out of this mess. Fighting for far-left environmentalists, it's no shock to anyone that the Washington Post has dubbed me public enemy #1 for the radical environmentalists for decades now. And for much of my time in the Senate, I was chair of the ranking member of the Environment and Public Works Committee. Throughout that time, I pushed back against the Obama administration far-left policies that sought to upend the lives of Oklahomans, like the Paris Climate Agreement, the waters of the U.S. rule, the Clean Power Plant, and many others. These policies were really about giving Washington bureaucrats sweeping control over the lives of millions of Americans. We are debating a lot of these same issues today, and I expect these disagreements will continue into the future. And lastly, I want to take a second to say thank you to all of my current and former staff. They're hanging around out here now. Didn't get much work out of them today. They were pretty busy. But my staff knows that once they leave my office, they are always the same thing. We become very close. We don't have people who leave. They become friends. I lovingly call my former staff the has-beens. It's something, a mark of honor, and to all of you, thank you. You're all about to be has-beens. Most importantly, to my family, I love you. When Kay and I got married 63 years ago, I could never imagine I'd be standing here today with 20 kids and grandkids saying goodbye. Thank you, all you guys, for all you've done all these years. And thank you for putting up with me. And to Kay, my best friend, and Rock, I can never put into words what you mean to me. So finally, I want to say to the people of Oklahoma, I really thank what you've done for me all these years. Thank you very much. I love you guys.
Mr. President,
Leader.
I just want to congratulate our friend from Oklahoma on an extraordinary career of service to his state and to our country. And I'll be having a lot more to say about the senior senator from Oklahoma a little later.